back once again. The Horror Guys with episode 83.
83.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Brian.
And we're here to talk about some horror movies that we saw this week.
Yeah, we are.
Some good, some bad. Some
okay.
in the middle of the road.
Yeah. Middle of the road.
Yeah.
All right. Well, episode 83. This time we will begin with The Devil Commands from 1941.
A sinister title I didn't think quite matched the movie very well.
Not really. No,
Yeah.
The devil had very little to do with it.
Yeah, not so much.
I suppose you could look at it that way if you're from the 40s. Vampire Circus from 1970.
Definitely an appropriate title.
Yeah, it's a circus and they're vampires. So yeah, that's good. Monster Madness, the Gothic Revival of Horror, a documentary from 2014. One of a series, but good standalone by itself. And the semi-classic-semi-comedic House from 1986.
And a short called Kissed. Yep, brand new.
Yeah.
So, we should talk about The Devil Commands.
We should. So here we go. So first up, we've got The Devil Commands from 1941. Black and white. Universal. Directed by Edward Dmytryk. Written by Robert Hardy Andrews and Milton Gunsberg. Stars Boris Karloff himself, and Revere, Amanda Duff. Hour and 5 minutes. What'd you think?
I liked it. Creepy and disturbing, and some of Karloff's in the top half of his work. I would put
certainly
it.
Not in the bottom half.
Not his greatest, not his bottom half. Overall, I give it a thumbs up. Not a huge, strong thumbs up, but 6-ish, 6.5, 5. Not 5, but 6.5, 7.
He was good. Mm-hmm. The rest of the actors and actresses are kind of forgettable in this one.
It's a little bit bland.
It's very bland, yeah.
But it's, I thought it was an interesting mix of science and seance.
Ooh.
Science.
Science and seance.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely more sci-fi than supernatural, but you could go
definitely
either way
supernatural element to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, using science to tap into the afterlife. And, Yeah, very cool.
Well, my name is Anne Blair, says the narrator. My father was Dr. Julian Blair. No one goes near my father's house. No one dares.
So the whole thing is a flashback.
He tore open the door to whatever lives beyond the grave 7 years ago. Well, that certainly sounds supernatural.
Yeah, it does. But he's a scientist.
Yeah, he is. We cut to a medical demonstration from 7 years ago. Blair has a volunteer in a big metal helmet. He plans to record brainwaves on a chart. In modern times, we call it an electroencephalogram machine. But this is his new invention. Well, his wife comes to pick him up, and today is Anne's 20th birthday. He wants to show the scientist his wife's EEG, so he wires her into the machine, and she puts on the huge, heavy metal helmet.
Very sci-fi looking labby thing.
Yeah, this is not a typical little two-electrode deal.
No, definitely not.
Her brainwave is stronger than Blair's other assistant, and he thinks that someday it may be possible to read thoughts from a distance by reading the graphs that this machine makes.
Mm-hmm. Translating them somehow.
Yeah. Well, the Blairs rush out to their daughter's party. He goes into the bakery to pick up a cake, while she drives around the block because there's nowhere to park. There's a crash. And Mrs. Blair is killed. Didn't see that coming. After the funeral, Blair goes back to his lab and turns on the machine that the assistant forgot to reset. He sees his wife's brain pattern on the graph, and he recognizes it. You can tell because it's got the right little bumps up and down on it.
Same pattern, but she's not there.
Yeah.
Or is she?
Well, he thinks his wife is trying to reach him. Proof of life after death.
And this is where it gets kind of supernaturally. Up to this point, he was, pretty solidly sciencey.
Not even science fiction-y. I mean, those little lines, they use those today.
And suddenly, we're crossed over into...
Proof of life after death, yes. Blair thinks he can adapt radio technology to allow communication between the living and the dead. One of his colleagues explains that There are some things that man was not meant to know.
Yeah, there's always one of those people in these
Always
movies.
one of them.
Blair's the doomsayer.
Yeah.
And they listen to these people.
They're always right. Turn out to be right.
They generally
in these cases.
are.
Yeah. Blair's assistant Carl suggests talking to his friend Blanche the medium, who claims she can talk to the dead as well. Is there a way to combine his technology and her mystical ability?
Let's find out.
Well, they go to a seance to talk to Carl's mother, and it is pretty impressive. Blair doesn't believe her, though. He proves that it's all just a trick. Blanche is a fake. Then again, Blair did feel electricity that she didn't use in her scam. He takes her back to the lab to test her. She actually can create an electrical voltage from her body. He straps Blanche and Carl into his machine, and the graph starts working again. The lines are drawn for the EEG. The machine pops, and Carl is electrocuted. Oops.
Can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs.
Well, he does survive, but he has brain damage. Blair then becomes obsessed. He sends his daughter away, resigns from the university, and moves to an isolated island to do his work. That seems sane.
And ratchets up the equipment a bit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The sheriff believes that Dr. Blair has been stealing bodies from the cemetery. The bodies have been going missing ever since Blair moved there. Blair tells the sheriff to leave. The sheriff warns that the town people will only stand for this for just so long before they're forced to act. The servant woman sneaks into the lab and finds a head in a jar hooked to the machine. That's never a good thing.
No.
Well, they kill her. Blair kills her. They keep experimenting with the machine, and the wind in the lab starts picking up. Blair can hear the dead voice of Helen, and he sees a tornado in the room.
Just gotta crank up the power, more bodies, more power.
Blanche is eventually wired up to 6 corpses. Oh, you should see what I typed here. 6 corpses. That's not good. Wired up to 6 different corpses, but that still isn't enough. Blanche is killed. Anne and her boyfriend stop by, and he appears reasonable. The townspeople are gathering to lynch Dr. Blair, and he decides that Anne is the key.
Uh-oh.
Her mind and her mother's are in tune with each other. He hooks her up to the machine, but he says it won't hurt her. The villagers are breaking in downstairs just as Blair hears Helen's voice and the ceiling collapses. Blair is sucked up into the tornado, and the machine explodes. The end.
So he sort of succeeded. It is the implication.
We'll never know.
Yeah.
The sequel.
Some things, man, were not meant to tamper with.
Yeah. Always some things man was not meant to know. The narrator is cliched and melodramatic even back in 1942. Still, the whole idea here was pretty unusual and creative. It's ridiculous, but if you go past that, it's pretty creative. It's well done, and the story is interesting, but it is pretty far-fetched. Blair never really heard much more than a voice calling his name, and he did kill multiple people. He definitely qualifies as a mad scientist.
Mad scientist, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's that, the devil commands. And one of the taglines that the publicity, this mad wizard kills at will in Satan's service, is one of the taglines. And really, there's no devil worship and no mention of
the devil.
The devil.
He hears maybe he hears a voice from beyond.
Yeah, and he's not very nice, killing all these people in the name of science, but, it's really not satanic.
Nobody's commanding him. No, there's no Satan. There's no devil.
Yeah, it's really off there.
Maybe he hears his dead wife's voice from beyond the grave, but beyond that, there's no supernatural really at all. Huh.
Yeah, anyway.
So for a film that did have some supernatural to it.
Yeah, just a bit.
Let's go to the circus. Let's go to the circus. It's a vampire circus from 1971.
What fun.
Yeah. Director Robert Young. Writer Judd Kinberg. Stars Adrienne Corey, Thorley Walters, Anthony Higgins, and a bunch of other people.
David Prowse. Darth Vader.
I don't know that he's the star, but yeah, he's there.
He's the strong man. Not surprising, being a big, strong guy.
If you ever wondered what Darth Vader looked like inside the costume, you could see his face. You can see all of him pretty clearly in this one. He gets a lot of screen time,
and he's big and buff. Yeah,
He still doesn't talk, does he?
A little bit.
He does.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Okay.
Yeah.
Run time's 1 hour and 24 minutes. Link in the show notes if you want to pick up the Blu-ray. And what did you think of this one?
I liked it. I liked it quite a bit.
Yeah,
I liked it more than the Devil Commands.
Yeah, yeah. I could say that's not saying much, but yeah, it was good. Mm-hmm. I did not care too much for the main vampire. I thought he was a little bit too much 70s.
Well, it's a little bit dated, yeah.
The curly hair,
1972. It's a
British bad teeth,
very
and all
70s
that.
movie.
Yeah, very stereotypical 70s.
Yeah, there is that, but we get past that, and yeah, it's all right.
Well, a child plays hide and seek in the woods with Anna, her mother. The two of them go inside the castle while the school teacher screams outside for her not to go. Inside, Jenny meets Count Mitterhaus, who is obviously a vampire, and he drains Jenny. The school teacher then rouses the locals, including Jenny's father and all the fathers who have had missing children. They break into the castle and find the dead girl. The Count is there, and he attacks, killing several of the men. Eventually, the school teacher and the mayor stake him through the heart. With his dying breath, Mitterhaus curses them all. Anna drags the body away while the villagers burn the castle. Mitterhaus tells her to find the Circus of the Night and his cousin Emil, who will know what to do. Credits roll. Yeah, all that was the first 5 minutes.
A lot happens before the credits.
15 years then pass.
It's a slow curse.
Yeah. 12 are dead, even the priests. The townsmen think it's a disease, but they can't get medicine because they can't get through the roadblocks. Now that's what you call enforcing a quarantine.
Yes.
Well, they think it's Mitterhaus's curse. Hauser now believes that there are no vampires, that Mitterhaus was just an evil man. As they argue, they hear the call. The Circus of the Night has come to town.
Well, they don't know it's the Circus of the Night at that point. They just think it's a regular circus.
Didn't it call the Circus of the Night?
Oh.
I thought that was like the name of the circus.
No, that'd be too obvious. If it was, I missed that completely.
Okay. I won't swear to it, but I thought that was... Come and see the Circus of the Night.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
They didn't call it the Vampire Circus.
No, probably not. That would be obvious.
Well, the circus puts on a nice introductory act, including a snake woman who seems to be completely naked except for body paint.
That didn't make it past the censors back in 1972 in England.
We got the newer version that has that restored, but yeah, you didn't see that one on late night TV.
Nuh-uh.
A black panther escapes from its cage and turns into Emil, a human-looking man. And we then see that Emil is a vampire.
Shapeshifter.
Emil. How do you say it?
Emil,
okay. The group digs under the castle and finds the intact body of Mitterhaus. Emil says all the men in town must die. Rosa, the burgomaster's daughter, has a crush on Emil. The burgomaster is sent into the funhouse alone. In the mirror, he sees himself being bitten by Mitterhaus. It's only a vision, but he has a heart attack from fright.
It's quite a house of mirrors.
It is.
Quite a fun house. An unfun house.
Another family is lured into the woods where they are staked and killed by a panther. Meanwhile, Dora, the school teacher's daughter, returns home from the big city. She's come through the roadblocks alive. Anton, the doctor's son, has a crush on Dora. A pair of young boys sneaks into the Hall of Mirrors and end up inside the mirrors, and also end up as dinner for two of the vampires, Helga and Heinrich. Of course, the circus people take the blame for the missing boys. Their necks are found. The boys are found with their necks torn out, and everyone thinks the Count is going to return.
Mm-hmm. The curse.
Hauser and the burgomaster go to the circus to kill the animals in their cages. Because, the animals in their cages killed people. No,
not so much. Some of them are really just animals.
Yeah, most of them are really just animals.
Yeah.
The burgomaster then shoots Emil, and then he dies from his heart condition. The school teacher recognizes the gypsy woman who runs the circus is really Anna, his wife from 15 years ago. That's where she's been.
Well, she's been hanging out there all this time.
Went from the school teacher's wife to become a vampire gypsy.
Right.
Dora and Anton go into the Hall of Mirrors, and they run into Helga and Heinrich as well. Dora is wearing a cross, so they manage to escape. The doctor returns to town with medicine for the bat's rabies, and he explains everything that's been going on. The vampires torment Dora, who loses her cross. Anton rushes in to save her. Before the two lovers can be killed, Dora pushes a giant crucifix onto Helga, and both she and her twin Heinrich die a horrible death.
There's pretty good body count in this one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The villagers storm the circus and kill the strong man. Emil kills Anna mistakenly. The villagers track Emil to Mitterhaus's crypt for a climactic battle. The school teacher ends up staking Emil with the same piece of wood that has been sticking out of Mitterhaus for all these years. One stake, two vamps.
Sure.
That's efficient.
Might as well.
Anton and Dora get up and get ready to leave when Mitterhaus wakes up, revived and healed. Anton surprises him with a crossbow.
I see what you did there.
And manages to behead him with it as well. The end.
Spoilers.
Wow. Yeah. Spoilers. Well, Dave Prowse plays the circus strongman in this, and he looks a lot more normal than he did when we saw him in Horror of Frankenstein a few episodes ago.
Yeah, he doesn't have the Frankenstein makeup.
Yeah, he looks like a normal guy. The Dance of the Naked Snake Woman was cut out of the original American release for reasons that will be obvious when you see it on the Blu-ray version. And this one is kind of unusual in the setting and the large cast of characters, most of which stand out. There's a lot of action, and everything gets explained before the end. And it is one of the better, later Hammer films.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good vampire movie.
Generally speaking, the Hammer films kind of deteriorated a lot as the years went on. They weren't...
This one was a good one.
They faded quite a bit. This one was good. Yeah, it was a bump in the road. A bump on the graph.
Yeah, that's right. A blip.
Yeah, and then we saw a short film.
Kissed. Sweet romantic little movie.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's from this year, 2020. Written and directed by Elwood Quincy Walker. Stars James Warfield by himself. And the runtime is 6 minutes, 15 seconds. Amazon link in the show notes.
Well, he's
not Amazon, YouTube link in the show notes.
He's not by himself. There's another person in the cast.
Yeah, but she's dead. That don't count. When Norman the Mortician has a one-way conversation with a cadaver. He asks her why she was found at the bottom of a lake, and he puts makeup on her face as the old-timey music plays. Norman proclaims, "Voila, you're done." And I always thought it was voila.
Depends on what country you're from, I
Okay.
think.
Viola, you're done. But she still looks pretty awful. Norman starts stroking her hair, and the music stops. He then leans in and kisses her. He then wipes off the lipstick and glues her mouth shut. He closes up the storage shelf and walks away.
The end.
On the other hand, maybe everything is not as obvious as it seems. No spoilers this time.
It was a good one, though.
The dim lighting and creepy music add a lot to the atmosphere of this story. I'm not sure that Norman really did anything really bad enough to deserve his fate, but he got it anyway. And the actual ending is a little bit ambiguous, but still very worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was very well done.
Very well done. I like this one a lot.
Yeah. Something happens and you're not quite sure how far it goes. Is it just gross or what happens there? We don't know.
Watch it and find out for yourself.
You decide. All right.
Then we saw a documentary.
We did.
Monster Madness from
Yeah.
2014.
We thought this looked really good until we found out it was the first of a series.
Well, it was still good, but
It's fine by itself.
now there's more to watch.
Yeah. Monster Madness, The Golden Age of Horror, Part 1.
The 30s and 40s and ish.
Yeah, the old stuff, of which we have reviewed a ton of those here already.
Yeah.
And this is back from 2014. You can watch this streaming on Amazon. I think it's Amazon Prime. Directed by Jeff Herberger. Written by Ace Svella. Stars Aaron Christensen and Gregory W. Mank. Hour and 19 minutes. Link in the show notes to Amazon Streaming. Don't have to buy it. What'd you think?
I liked it. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Had a lot of bits of trivias and interview bits and
scene
bits. And,
I was surprised at how little of this I didn't already know.
Mm-hmm.
Reading the trivia for all these films that we've seen, very few of these films have we missed.
All kinds of stuff.
We got a few of them coming up that we wrote down after watching this, too.
So even if you've seen a ton of movies and think you're all jaded and know it all, yeah, you should watch this.
Yeah. Well, this documentary covers the early horror films of mostly of Universal, including the history of the studio itself and its founder, Carl Laemmle. From a small theater rented in a storefront to the opening of Universal City, it details Laemmle's rise and includes interviews with his niece, Carla Laemmle, who actually acted in both the 1925 version of Phantom of the Opera and the original Dracula in 1931. In the late 1920s, Carl Laemmle Jr. took over the studio from his father, and he started modernizing, shifting many new films to color and winning the Academy Award in 1930 for All's Quiet on the Western Front.
Making Universal a big deal.
Not a horror film, but it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
1931, Universal released both Dracula and Frankenstein, which were both massive hits at the time. There's a long section of the documentary about Dracula and Bela Lugosi, and there were interviews with Bela Lugosi Jr., who, if you saw him on the street, you'd recognize him. Mm-hmm. You'd know who he was related to.
Strong resemblance, yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is followed by a discussion of Karloff in Frankenstein, and how a wonderful performance by Karloff, even buried in makeup with no lines, made the film memorable. And, of course, there's an interview with Sarah Karloff, Boris's daughter. The documentary then walks us forward through time, with the old dark house, the black cat, the mummy, the bride of Frankenstein, Mark of the Vampire, Mad Love, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and a whole string of other movies.
They cover a lot of stuff in it.
They do, yeah.
It's not that long, really, but they cram a lot in.
Yeah. The Island of Lost Souls and King Kong are discussed here, two of the big non-Universal films of the period. Yeah, Universal mostly had this stuff wrapped up, but not completely.
Mm-hmm.
It then advances to discuss the way the studio changed during the World War II years. As an escape from reality, horror really took off. Monsters on the screen are decidedly less frightening than having your husband or son go off to fight in a war. Yeah, there's that going for it.
Certainly is.
In 1941, The Wolfman was their first completely original mega hit. It wasn't based on a book or other story. They created the lore and rules from scratch. Although Werewolf of London from 20 years before had a different in-world lore.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
Okay, 6 years before. It was 1935.
Well, but it was different, yeah.
Yeah. We bounce over to RKO Studio, who had The Body Snatcher and the remake of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which were both very successful. Mighty Joe Young was big in 1949, and then came The House of Frankenstein and Dracula, which were the big crossover events, or as they call them here, monster rally films, which were fun but not particularly seriously done. The studio stopped innovating around this time, and the genre began to change. And that ends the history of horror with this particular episode.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not so much of a great introduction to horror as it is a reminder for people who have seen the films not so recently and want to reawaken excitement for these old classics. Most of the interviews and discussions from actors' descendants look like they may have been recorded decades ago on videotape, but they are still interesting.
And they put them together now. And then we saw House from 1985.
That Hugh Laurie, he is funny.
Yeah, he's a hoot. Wait, no.
Not That House?
Not That House.
Not That House, okay. Yeah, this is the horror movie just called simply House from 1985.
The one with William Catt.
Yeah, the greatest American hero. You remember that show?
I do remember that show.
I do remember that show.
I saw a lot of that show.
I think, all that show.
He was good.
There wasn't that much to it, really.
He was good in that show.
Yeah?
He was good in this movie.
I don't remember him doing much of anything else after that. He was in the original Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
And not a lot else.
Yeah, he's
A lot of TV work.
Been working here and there on bits and pieces, and working steady.
I think he was somebody's assistant on one of those 80s or 90s detective shows. Murder, She Wrote or something like that.
Models Incorporated. He had a pretty good recurring role on that for a while.
Okay. Oh, you're looking at IMDb there?
I'm looking at IMDb. I'm cheating. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's directed by Steve Miner, written by Fred Decker and Ethan Wiley, stars William Catt, Kay Lenz, and George Wendt. Norm! Runtime, 1 hour, 33 minutes. So did you like it?
I liked it less this time around. I liked it more, when I hadn't seen it this second viewing. I remember it being better.
I saw it at least once in the 80s, probably more than that.
I saw it when it came out at the theater.
In or just out of high school, and I thought it was a good, funny horror film, and I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
And I think I missed a whole lot of subtext the first time, with all the Vietnam and flashbacks and PTSD and all that.
It was a lot grimmer than I remember it being.
I thought it was a funny movie originally, and this is
less funny.
Yeah, it's a lot less funny now,
and less happens. I don't know. It seemed kind of slow and draggy.
I think in my mind I conflated this one and the second movie, which was a whole lot more comedy.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
The second story.
Yeah, with the little dog creature and all that. Yeah, I think the second one was mostly done just for fun. This one, it's not really fun. Not mostly. Well, a grocery delivery boy stops by at Mrs. Hooper's house, and he finds her hanging in the bedroom. Mr. Jones then explains to nephew Roger Cobb, who is a writer, that she wasn't crazy. He's a horror writer who is now writing a book about his experiences in Vietnam. His agent nags him that he needs to come up with something new, and a Vietnam memoir just isn't going to be it.
But he's insistent.
Yeah. Still, Roger explains, it's something I've just got to do. Cobb keeps pestering the FBI about his missing son, but they have no leads. He lost his wife due to his obsession with his missing son. And he steps by Aunt Cooper's place, which he has inherited.
And that's where the son disappeared from.
Coincidentally, yes.
Yeah.
The realtor's already got it listed for sale, and there's an auction scheduled for next month. It's a huge old house, and it's also where his son was last seen.
Oh, there you go.
The old lady has always said that the house was haunted. And Roger decides not to sell the old house, and instead he's going to move in. Mrs. Hooper's ghost explains to Roger that the house tricked her, and that it would trick him as well.
Yeah, she kind of appears as a brief ghost.
Yeah.
A brief haunting.
This house knows everything about you. The next morning, he meets his neighbor, Harold. He finally starts on his Vietnam book, and he starts getting PTSD flashbacks about an ambush involving his war buddy named Big Ben. He finds a monster in the closet, so then he orders a bunch of video recording equipment to catch it on film the next night. Of course, it doesn't make a second appearance.
But there's a trick to it.
Well, he starts wearing army fatigues around the house as he continues to see weird stuff. Roger dwells more and more in his Vietnam flashback, and it starts to get iffy as to what is real and what might be his imagination. He sees the tools from the garden chase him around the house. He shoots his ex-wife mistakenly, believing her to be a monster. Roger pretends his gun went off accidentally when the police arrive.
And there's no body.
When he looks later, yep, there's no body. The witch is then killed by flying garden tools, and he buries her in the backyard. And that's kind of a funny scene.
Yeah, it's got some dark humor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he talks Harold into shooting a raccoon, in quotation marks, that lives in his closet, and he expects the monster in the closet to reappear. Instead, Roger gets pulled into the closet with it. When he stands up, he's back in Vietnam, right next to Big Ben, who has been shot with a machine gun. Ben, who's not dead, asks Roger to kill him, but then he's captured by the enemy instead. He wakes up and heads back to the house. Roger then finds a hole behind his bathroom mirror and hears Jimmy's voice inside, his missing son. Roger ties a rope to the toilet and lowers himself through the hole. He goes through a river into Vietnam and rescues Jimmy from a bamboo cage. He's rescuing the kid that he can rescue in the place that he couldn't rescue the other guy.
Yep, pretty cool.
Well, he then encounters Big Ben's evil skeleton, who blames Roger for weeks of torture before they finally killed him. They chase each other and argue for a bit, and Roger finally throws Ben off a cliff. Finally, Roger ends up beating Ben with Ben's own grenade after he grows some bravery. Roger, Jimmy, and his ex-wife, who's not dead at all, are soon reunited for a happy ending as the house burns down. All right. Well, I saw this multiple times when it first came out, and I remember liking it a lot. The first 45 minutes are a lot slower than I remembered.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
About an hour in, it starts to get a little bit crazy with puppet monsters. Yeah, this is I don't think there was any CGI in this. It was all puppets and
practical effects, yeah.
Yeah. The only serious monster here, the only serious threat is Richard Mall's Big Ben, and although he's pretty good, he doesn't really carry an entire movie. I think I mentally conflated this film with a much sillier sequel, which I definitely liked more.
Now we have to see the sequel again, you know.
Yeah, sometime. I didn't really catch on to the PTSD/Vietnam prisoner of war connection when this was new, but it's pretty blatant on a modern rewatch. He ends up rescuing Jimmy in a way that he never could with Big Ben, and shows courage that wasn't there back in the war. Did you ever have one of those situations where you think of something witty to say after the conversation? Well, this is like that, only with courage and war.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, the whole thing, I don't know how much of this is even real, or how much of it's just in his head as he imagines PTSD while he's writing his book.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah. That's our show. Thanks for joining us. Stop in during the week at horrorguys.com to read all the reviews and do all the other fun things that are there. So, are we going to see some films next week?
We are. What are we going to see? We're going to see Captive Wild Woman from 1943. That was a hard one to find. And we'll have a little snack with Countess Dracula in 1971. And we'll take a trip overseas with a Chinese horror movie, Blood Moon from 2008. And the last one is a little bit of suffering with the Amityville Curse from 1990. A barely sequel to the Amityville Horror.
Very barely sequel.
Yeah.
It's got the name Amityville in it. That's as far as we're going to go. And, of course, we'll watch in a short film. All right. Well, that's it for this week. Again, stop in at horrorguys.com. I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And we'll see you next week.
See ya.